Glenn, how are you? And how good did it feel to be back in my hometown of Ottawa last month to play the Canadian Tire Center?
Well, I'm well. Thank you, Joel, for asking. And it felt great. All the shows we've done so far this year have been amazing. I'd say that show was part of the first run of shows that was more than just a few shows in a row that we've done in 5 years. Because prior to the pandemic, after our last tour, which I think was 2017, our last full cross Canada tour, Greg Keeler, one of our singers, kind of hit a wall in terms of his health, and he was like, "I can't do this anymore." He's been diabetic for since like 90. I think he was diagnosed as being diabetic in 95. So he's been dealing with that for a long time. He also has some hearing issues, severe tinnitus and stuff, and at the end of our last sort of cross Canada tour, 2017, he, like I say, he hit a wall. He was like, I can't do this anymore. So we were just doing one-offs, and we would not do more than a couple of shows in a row. But during the pandemic, he was starting to feel better, and I think some of his reasons for not wanting to tour anymore was also just kind of frustration with the band, which can kind of happen after a band's been kicking around for about 35 years. And but after taking a period of sort of slowing down and not working as intensively, he felt ready to get back into it. So this year was the first time we were actually out on the road for more than a week at a time, and it was amazing because we all missed it, and the shows were great. Playing the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa is always a blast. That's a fantastic, it's a great venue because it's an arena that actually sounds good. And so arenas are fun. Like, they're always fun, but some of them are like, this is fun, but it sounds awful. Some of them are just like giant toilets, cement toilets with tin roofs. But that arena actually sounds really good, and the Ottawa crowd is always great. So it was a blast.
Yeah, arenas aren't always conducive to good acoustics, so
They really aren't.
It's always nice when they do sound good. How amazing is it that during the pandemic, musicians aren't sure if you're ever even going to play live again, and you guys are still playing arenas? Like, what does it mean to you that not only are people showing up, but enough to play arenas, which is amazing?
Well, I feel a lot of gratitude now for how the band has endured and that we still have an audience. I think there was a time. I know there was a time, I would say probably about 50, maybe like 20 years ago, when we were touring a lot. And I remember Basil and I, the bass player, Basil and I, we used to bitch a lot. We'd be like, which is kind of like bands do that, especially after you've been together for a long time. You have an ally in the band and you just sit together and kvetch about things. You're just like complaining about this, that, and the other. And like, the other band members, like, why is this like this? And I look back on that and I think, like, what was I thinking? Like, why did we spend so much time complaining? We were I don't think I saw that, how fortunate we were to be doing what we're doing. And then to have the experience, and then, basically after a while, when you sort of start going, oh my God, we're still here, we're still doing this, then you start to feel more like, okay, I'm actually really lucky this is still happening, and that people are still coming and still want to see the band, and that the band is surviving at all. Because we have had our ups and downs, and there's a reason bands don't last as long as ours have. It's because it's really hard. Like, it's really hard to keep a band together that long. It's hard to stay creatively vital. It's hard to get along that long. It's hard to want to stay in the business or to stay healthy enough. Because it's a job where you can drink, you can you can do stuff, you can do stuff that's necessarily not good
A
for
lot
you.
of times it's encouraged, actually.
Well, yeah, it's it, especially earlier on, there may be this kind of romantic idea, like, yeah, man, have a few drinks, get on stage, loosen up a little. But inevitably what happens is like I mean, how many people in the band are ex-drinkers now? Like, I think, let's see, one, to, I think we're just at 3. Maybe I don't know, but I know so many musicians who at a certain point went, yeah, I had to stop, because, you get to a point where it's either you stop or you're not going to be able to continue, you're not going to be functional, so there's all that sort of thing that you have to get past. And if you still have an audience, you're incredibly lucky. So I don't play a show now without going, I'm so grateful. I don't go on stage, at the end and not look out at the audience and go, I'm so happy this is still happening. I'm so grateful. And it felt amazing to do that after the pandemic, because there was a certain, I didn't feel like we'll never play live again, but there was, we had the rug pulled out from under us many times. We thought we're going to be back. And then it was like, no, that's got to be postponed. Oh, there's another wave. Oh, there's another lockdown. And so all that was, discouraging, obviously, so it felt amazing to be actually past it, even though it was touch and go. We had a couple of crew members that got sick. A few of us got sick. We did an Eastern leg where we did a few shows on the East Coast, and then on the way home, I was like, I don't feel good. I think I partied too much last night or something, And then I got home and did a test and realized I was sick. And then 2 other band members got sick, and luckily we had a week off. We actually did have to postpone one show we were supposed to do in Peterborough, but we were supposed to do Massey Hall the next week, So we basically, the 3 of us had like 1 week to sort of get well enough to do Massey Hall, which we managed to do. But it was, even then it was touch and go. But it was amazing to be back. And playing Massey in particular, that was their first time in 5 years. And that was amazing to be back and do that.
Yeah, the more I talk to musicians, the more the main thing that comes up is just gratitude. People are grateful to be back, and that there's still an audience and people are still passionate about music. You mentioned how hard it is to have longevity over a career. It's like a marriage, but with a marriage, there's just 2 people that have to get along. In your case, there's 7 people over, 3-4 decades that have to get along. So
yeah, there's 7 people, but people do come and go too. So that's the thing. With bands, you can divorce some of them. But yeah, like for instance, for Blue Rodeo to sustain, like Jim and Greg have to stay together. They're, if anybody's relationship is a bit like a marriage, it's theirs. Which I remember thinking that when I first joined the band. It's like, they're like an old married couple. And which they are and they aren't. But the band is based around their relationship and their songwriting and singing together, and the fact that they've managed to endure, like they've been friends. They started hanging out when they were 14, 15 or something like that, and they're 66 and 67 now. So I don't know. Somebody do the math quickly. It's been a long time, and but yeah, they've managed to endure.
So I'm all about networking and building community. So I like to share for our audience. I always like to share how I ended up here today with my guests. So I had our mutual friend Alf Annibalini on the podcast recently. He's an amazing producer, recording engineer, and he's now a part of the supergroup Envy of None with Alex Lifeson from Rush. And I wanted to kick this podcast off in style. So I reached out to Alf and I got some kind words sent from him. So he says, I've worked with him 3 times in total. Once when I was an assistant on a Betty Moon session when he was drumming and producing. I think it was my first or second session ever. Once
was in Wellesley. That was a long time ago.
Once with Blue Rodeo for a song on the Leonard Pelche album to raise awareness for a cause. And finally with Hayden. He is incredibly musical, writes songs, plays guitar, sings, and he is the type of drummer that has a knack for playing exactly what is needed. I don't know him as well as my partner in Envy of None, Andy Curran, but I had a great time every time we were in the studio. So that's from Alf.
Oh, that's really nice. And Alf is, like I said, we worked together 3 times, and the Betty Moon session he was talking about was, that was my one. I've since done one other production, and I don't know if you don't count my own records. That was the one time I produced a session, and but it never got released, unfortunately. But yeah, that was at Wellesley Sound, and I remember watching some of that podcast you did with him, and him talking about how he got his start at Wellesley in Toronto. That's really nice of him. Yeah, and I guess the other things I did with him were at Orange, I believe, and with when Rodeo did some songs for the Leonard Peltier benefit record that Greg started, and then the Hayden track, that was just a song I got hired to play drums on, Trees Lounge by Hayden. And I remember him talking about that, saying, "Oh, we did it so fast." But I actually really like that record. I think it sounds great, and I think they did a great job on it. Anyway, that's really nice of him. And Andy Curran, also the bass player in Envy of None. He's someone I played with back in the late '80s, early '90s. He had a band. He used to be in Coney Hatch, who were like a '70s hard rock band. Who had a gold record and did really well. They had a few hit songs like Monkey Bars and stuff, which I think Andy wrote. And I met Andy when I was working on a solo album by this guy Malcolm Byrne in the late '80s. Malcolm Byrne used to have a band called Boys Brigade, and then he released a solo album. Then after he didn't really pursue his solo career, he then moved to New Orleans and started recording under Daniel Lanois' wing. And he ended up producing records by the Neville Brothers, and he actually produced Blue Rodeo's second album, Diamond Mine. But after I worked with Andy on that Malcolm Byrne record, he got me to come out and audition to record his first solo album, which was called Andy Curran and Soho 69. I can't remember. I think the record might have been called No Tattoos. I can't remember. So, and that was interesting because that was kind of a hair metal band, which was not my thing. Like sort of in the vein of Aerosmith. I mean, I liked that stuff, but it was kind of not where I came from. I came from a kind of a post-punk background when I first came to Toronto. That was sort of my thing, and those were kind of the bands that I played in. But I knew that I wanted to make a living as a drummer. I sort of realized early on that if I tried to sort of, have a straight job and be a musician, that I was just going to sink into a massive depression. I just knew I had to play music, and that I was willing to do whatever it took to become a professional musician, including living a life of relative poverty. That was okay. I'd rather be poor and do what I love doing than do something that doesn't make me happy. And I sort of realized that early on, that mentally I had to make that choice. So even though, so at first I was like, I'm just going to play in cool post-punk bands and stuff. But then very quickly I realized I'm not going to make a living doing that. So I'm going to play with everybody, anybody who will have me, any style of music. And so then I started branching out. And so I ended up playing with Andy for a couple of years, and that was fun. And he actually, I'm still buds with Andy. He's a great guy, and he's managed to sustain a career in the business end of things. So I'm really happy to see him doing well in Envy of None, because he's a really talented musician, songwriter, and he's someone who's hung in for decades, and he deserves that success. So I'm happy for him. And Elf too.
So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't also get a quote from Andy Curran. So this is what Andy Curran has to say. He says, well, Glenn once told me he loved playing live with me because he could hit as hard as he wanted, and I never once complained. And he put a smiley face emoji in there. He said, we're talking about maybe recording and doing a few shows for the anniversary of the No Tattoos record, which is what you said. Right. Give him my love. So that's from Andy Curran.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. He's a great guy. And he's he got me a gig many years after I played with him, because he was connected to work for Anthem Records. I can't even remember. I think it's as a management. He was in a management company that was also working with Big Rec and Ian Thornley. And Ian Thornley wanted to do an acoustic record which he released as Ian Fletcher Thornley, and Andy recommended me as a drummer for that. So I played, and that was about, I guess it was about 6 years ago. I think the record's called Secrets, Ian Fletcher Thornley Secrets, and so I recorded that with him and did a Canadian tour with him, and I owe Andy for that.